Oh,
Recording in progress. I remember to do it this time. And so check it out when you can. We are here with Ben Vasko, all the way from Boston. Ben, say hi.
hello.
Good. All right, we can end this now.
Perfect. Great. See you
Yeah,
guys later.
we're really excited. Nick has been having people write short kind of blurbs, short little essays for our blog, and this is going to be our first time we were able to go a little bit more in depth with the author. That little essay is up. We'll have a little post celebrating it tomorrow. But Ben wrote a little bit about. Raising your expectations, raising your higher ceilings, kind of maintaining that. And I wanted to just start off, Ben, if you could just give us a tiny little snippet from your essay, your main takeaway that you hope people get after they read it. What would that be?
I'd say definitely that when you come into an issue in your playing or kind of a fork in the road where you can choose to either be frustrated and kind of go down a drain of frustration and anger and resentment and obviously distraction from what you're trying to get done, you will also have the option to be excited about that, about the challenge and raising your own personal bar, and seeing a new ceiling that you have the opportunity to meet. So you can kind of look at things two ways. It's really about perspective.
Great. Ben, I actually have a follow-up question for your
Sure.
essay reading it. So you're talking about frustration with playing, and something I noticed, this is more so in my undergrad. I don't know if this was probably the case at UT and UGA. I just wasn't as aware of it, but people whose playing was so tangled in their self-esteem that if they were having a bad playing day, they were having a bad day in general. So how do you balance having raising a ceiling, having these high expectations for yourself with the burden of improving every day and not have that be the result?
That's really, really hard to do and something that I'm, still working on. Um, but what I try to do is convince myself that, um, whatever it is that I have to get over doesn't have to be done by the end of the day. Typically our deadlines are far away, and if we're organized and prepared, we meet them um, with a level of preparedness that is reflective of the work we put in. And then that's most of the time in my experience is that when I get to a deadline, um, the whole facade comes down, and however prepared I am is what I give. Um, I've had instances where getting ready for competitions or auditions where I didn't put the work I thought I did. And, you think you're doing great, and it's like, well, I sound fine, but I've kind of skirted around a couple things, and you can't be surprised when things don't turn out as planned. So really, we're always playing this really long game, and so I think that every inch forward is progress, and you can't let yourself get frustrated if you take, you know, two steps back, because tomorrow you might take three forward. It's all about what you're going to do the next time you pick up the horn, not what you did when you just put it down.
Ben, could you maybe share what the most helpful place this kind of mindset was impacted in? Maybe it's like a technical thing, or maybe it's a personal thing when you're practicing. I know for me, I think in all parts of music you kind of have people saying a similar thing. I love the way you put it in your essay, but when I started dealing with some issues, full disclosure, I deal with, and I've been having some stuff with, valsalva, a little delay, little tightening up when you start a note. And when I started working on it, it was the only way I got through it was by having a higher expectation for not the result, but my focus when I was trying to work on that issue. Can you share just a little bit about maybe what your biggest personal victory has been since you've been maintaining this idea?
Totally. I frequently visit lesson notes from my previous mentors. I've got maybe 7 or 8 years of lesson notes saved on my phone from every lesson I've taken since I started at Texas, which was my big regret. To go on a tangent, I didn't record any of my lessons with Sam, which was dumb. But I was 18 and not thinking that that everything would go the way it did. But I got to Texas and realized things will change really fast. I should write all this down because I didn't expect to transfer in my undergrad. And so for me, I was going through these notes again, and I was actually talking to Nick about this on the phone the other day. A lot of what I wrote down and a lot of what my previous teachers told me was about how you need to go by what you hear and not by what you feel. Um, and I'd always been really into, if it feels good, it's probably going to sound okay, just because that's so easy. It's really, really easy to go with what feels comfortable. And just because it feels good, that could only be a matter of, you've put time into doing something in a way that isn't really great, but it's comfortable because you've always done it that way. So that doesn't really mean it's good. Um, but I never really, I thought I was hearing at a high level. I always did until I got to Boston and I started studying with Mike Roylance, and he put it in a way that just made so much sense to me. He said, well, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And that got me thinking about, every time I make the sound I want, or I do anything right, like a tiny little glimmer of gold in my playing, that glimmer turns into the vision, right? So I take that little bit, and instead of saying like, man, all of this sounds terrible, I have one good note in this etude that sounded nice. I can think I can take that one glimmer and I can expand that over the entire work. I can take that little bit that was really great and polish the rest of it to that level. So that raises the bar of expectation for everything I do, and I try and do that with everything. I mean, I picked up the bass recently, and it is much easier than the tuba. But every time I play a note and the fret doesn't buzz, to me that's like a really exciting moment of like, one day I'm going to be able to play, and every note's just going to have that clarity. And it's the same with the tuba. If I make a really great sound, I hold on to it really hard instead of thinking of all the sounds that were surrounding it.
Yeah, awesome. So Ben, you mentioned when it comes to lessons, right? As far as logging things down and just keeping a track of everything that's been said in lessons and incorporating into your own, daily routines and stuff. But I'm wondering, how you navigate that kind of like dichotomy, right, between like flexibility and also planning to not go in either extreme if you ever find yourself in such a situation. I mean, I know for myself, for example, I tend to plan things very strictly, and like maybe even micromanage some things. But then, let's say a gig pops up, or something happens that's going to affect your day, like tomorrow or within 2 days, and that just like involves so much shifting around. Um, how do you just navigate that need to adjust your plans to not let that phase you, kind of like what Nick was hinting at, but also,
Mm.
being able to move forward with whatever your original game plan was.
It's funny because I've never thought of myself as a super organized person, at least in my like presentation of myself. But again, going back through those notes, um, I'm a lot more methodical than I realize. I have schedules of every time I was like working on something in undergrad, I have a schedule that says like my A, B, and C list for Monday through Sunday of like, this is how I'm going to hit everything and get it all done. You play in all these ensembles and you want to do competitions and you want to do auditions. And so I made these like all these calendars, and I'd make them once and follow it for a week and forget about it and make another one. So I have like endless calendar notes on my phone of organized practice plans. Um, but I'm in one of those right now. I'm doing like a big audition prep. There's a lot of stuff that's going to open. So I'm in the middle of what's typically like a 9-week process. Um, and it's planned to the day. And so I've had the same thing where it's like, I have to go play sousaphone at Fenway Pack and throw my chops out the window, or I played a little too hard and it wasn't a great day. And so, um, I was talking to somebody earlier, another friend, and they just told me they're like, you got to do what your body says you got to do. Now that might have been Nick actually. I can't remember who it was. It was someone. It was Nick probably, but. Um, because I wasn't feeling great yesterday, and today I was supposed to start another phase of my master plan, and I didn't feel like it, and so instead I took the day to play etudes and retool and kind of um, find a new path to start on going into the rest of this audition prep. And so I think it's scary to do that. It's really scary to take a hard set plan off the rails, but sometimes that's exactly what you need. Um, and if you have a thought in the back of your mind, like, man, I really want to just hang out tomorrow, or man, it's not you being lazy. It's probably you really needing that thing. You should listen to yourself and not ridicule yourself for wanting a day off. I think that's very normal and acceptable. So a long answer short, I try and be as routine and regimental with a lot of my practicing and playing as I can. But I'm, getting better at listening to yourself, I think, is a really strong value. And, if you want other people to listen to you, you should start by listening to yourself.
That's a great point. And just to touch on the comment you made about taking a plan like that off the rails, as you put it, if you read a lot of stories about how brass players injure themselves, it's because they create these plans and they commit to them and they don't listen to their bodies, and it's all downhill from there. So there are a lot of, I think it's there's a website online, it's on one of our blog posts, I put it on, that I recommend people check out. It's got a lot of stories about brass musicians that have dealt with injuries and how they overcame them. It's really, really inspirational. So Ben, I'm going to switch gears here. And for anyone out on Instagram, Ben offers a lot of variety as a teacher and performer. He hinted at that playing sousaphone at Fenway Park. So if you could just talk about, I'm going to leave this pretty open-ended, how just your life story, how that came to be, playing in different genres, and mentors, formative experiences, resources for people that would also like to offer variety as a performer or teacher.
So I'm from El Paso, Texas, which, if you know Texas, it is this part right here. Of course, Texas is a gun. But so I'm from El Paso, and El Paso doesn't have a ton of money. But what it does have is like a really strong like community vibe. And so I was super lucky. My middle school band director was the tuba player in the El Paso Symphony. And I started on the euphonium because my dad played euphonium and his dad played euphonium. I was a third generation euphonium player. And that's a whole other, I guess we're going to keep it open-ended. My grandpa moved to America as a kid from Hungary. And when he moved to America, he learned English through the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army has a huge brass band program. So him and his, 12 siblings all played brass instruments. And so my dad was a brass player as a kid, and of course I was going to have to be one too. And so I played the euphonium, and my teacher told me very bluntly, you're decent at this. If you ever want to play music, you should probably switch to the tuba. Sorry, Matt. And so reluctantly I did, and hashtag sorry dad. He wasn't too pleased, but El Paso had this wealth of opportunity, and we had and they still do a great youth orchestra program, the El Paso Symphony Youth Orchestras, which is actually run by a Texas alum, James Welch. He was my conducting TA at UT. He runs the program now and does a very good job. And they do great relations with like across the border and with like elementary schools. And so between having band directors who knew what was going on and this really great youth orchestra program, I played in my first brass quintet in 7th grade. I played in my first symphony orchestra in 8th grade. I was really lucky that not all of it was, it wasn't Carnegie Hall and the Chicago Symphony or whatever, but I was playing a lot of rep and listening to a lot. And the other thing that got me really, really interested in music was there was a high school jazz band where I would play guitar and bass trombone. And then also I'm a huge drum corps nerd. And this is very obvious to anyone who knows me knows that. But I need to say it to the millions of people listening. The reason I know so much repertoire is because I loved watching and listening to drum corps, and I would look up what they were playing and then fall in love with music. You know, the first time I heard Shostakovich was a drum corps. The first time I heard Sinsemaya was a drum corps. Like, it introduced me to so much great music that everyone around me in music school when I was older didn't know because they weren't a big nerd, you know? And so it really paid off in that regard of opening my eyes to the possibilities of music through a narrow vehicle of, you know, horns on a field. But when I did my homework, I found a lot of different stuff. My teacher in middle school, my band director and the tuba player in the symphony, he had studied with Sam Palafian. Sam used to play jazz gigs in El Paso and would give him lessons when he would blow through town. And so the whole time I was growing up, my teacher told me that the only person that I needed to consider for my undergrad was Sam Palafian at Arizona State. And my my teacher actually, he passed away when I was in eighth grade. He had a lot of health complications, and so I was like dead set. I was like, okay, well, you know, I can't really ask him for advice anymore. But what he told me was I got to study with this Sam guy and make it happen. So I auditioned at one school for my undergrad. I took one audition, and it was Arizona State with Sam, which is a boneheaded move, but I didn't know any better. And I got a call in March of my senior year from Sam saying, "Well, hey, you know, I just took the job at the University of Miami. Do you want to go?" I had 24 hours to apply to the school before the application window was closed, and I just say yes right away and just make it happen, having never been there or considered it or anything. Um, and so I went there, and that's kind of where my love for doing different things started. Um, you know, I've always listened to a lot of different music, but uh, Miami has this amazing wealth of programs, especially their jazz program. It's really really killer, and Sam himself was very you know, not stuck in a box of any kind. And so um, I was in a studio of all performance majors. I was an ed major for one semester, and then everyone else was a performance major, and everyone was so good. And all I thought was like, man, you know, they keep telling us that we need to stand out and diversify and make a career that's really varied. And I am wallpaper with my colleagues who are all awesome, but it's like, you know, I'm part of the crew. I'm just me in the background. And so I was wondering how I could branch out and be different. And Sam told me that. He said, "Well, you know, you have decent ears. Why don't you try this jazz improv class?" You know, and one thing led to another, and I was doing that, and I was doing some other theory classes. And at that point, he asked, "Well, why don't you just become a jazz major?" And so we walked into the dean's office, and the dean said, "Well, I don't see why not." And so I was the first tuba jazz major at the University of Miami. And it was really really hard, and jazz is really difficult, especially if you've never done it before at a school like that. But I learned a ton of like theoretical stuff, and then I had to leave. So it's a really expensive place. I don't have a ton of money. I couldn't afford to keep going there. And so I dropped out of school before Thanksgiving my sophomore year, and I put all my things in my car and I drove back to Texas and decided to regroup and replan. And I did some core classes at home at UTEP, and then I started at UT the next year, where you can't be a tuba jazz major. So I just played the game. I decided I was gonna, you know, do the tuba thing as well as I could. Professor Villarubia was, of course, very encouraging, and then Austin had a good enough music scene to help me kind of catch my playing brain up to my theory brain. So I had all this knowledge about the way jazz works, and I couldn't do any of it on the tuba. I didn't understand it at all. It made no sense to me um, until I started playing in second line groups and other bands in Austin. And I was able to kind of make my own way of understanding jazz harmony and changes in a practical and applicable way. Um, yeah, so that's how I got into all that. That's very long-winded, but that's how we got there.
I want to just backtrack for a little bit, and then we have a question from the wonderful Keith Packman. But I'm going to go first because I'm the one on the call. Sorry, Keith. Yeah, I'll fight him from here. He's not in Austin. So we mentioned you talked a little bit about drum corps. I think that's something a lot of people are interested in, and a lot of people are somewhat don't really understand exactly what goes on in them. Can you give us kind of the three big takeaways that you got from being influenced by drum corps, and then the three things that you try and teach students in drum corps that you work with? And could you remind me what organization that you work with?
I teach the Blue Devils from
Blue
Concord,
Devils.
California.
I knew it was blue in the name, but there's sadly there's a lot of them, and I'm sure that's a joke that is funny to only me. But please, could you answer the question before I make another silly?
Well, it's funny because I marched one summer when I was in high school, and I didn't hate it. I really didn't like it. It was really hard. Uh, I felt like my playing got way worse, and it was a long, grueling summer. And so I get to Miami, um, and I'm talking with Sam, and then my TA at the time, whose name is Connor Haley. He's in one of the naval bands in San Diego, and Connor had marched Blue Devils before, and Sam had worked with drum corps, and I was talking. We were again talking about ways I could diversify my career and what I should do. And Sam's like, "You've got to be the marching band guy," and I was like, "What do you mean? Like that's, I'm at this performance department, at this illustrious whatever. Like I've got to leave that behind. I got to get serious." And he's like, "I don't understand the words you're saying to me. Like you have this wide open path for a career here that not everyone can do. So why don't you do it?" And that's kind of what inspired me to continue marching. Um, and so that's when I joined the Blue Devils, and I spent 3 summers there as a member. Um, and each summer I got better. And my teacher there was Kevin Ronan, who did 2 degrees at Arizona State with Sam and in March BD. And then Sam actually worked with us my last 2 seasons there. We got Sam on board, and so when I couldn't be at Miami for whatever reason, I got to see Sam during the summer, and still have my mentor coaching me just in a different setting, which was really cool. And it greatly influenced the way I teach groups. But I guess what I got from it, was one, I guess they're kind of the same with what I teach. I try and just pass things along, and I think the best teachers are the relay racers who pass the baton the fastest and most efficiently. Um, but the first big thing was you can always get better in that situation. Yes, you're playing a ton every single day, which for a lot of people is the draw. Like I played, hours and hours and hours a day, which was great for endurance. But a lot of people, they either go too hard in the paint, they play a little too loud, or they don't put sunscreen on their face, or they use a lip balm that's just atrocious for you. You make little decisions that bring you down. But for me, it was, if I take care of my chops and I play at a reasonable dynamic and not overstate it, and then use my free time, my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, before breakfast, after dinner, to practice my instrument, which I brought etude books. Half of my suitcase was etude books, and I would just plug away at them. I brought an F tuba my last summer. I've brought tubas teaching. You can get better if you work around those schedules. So you have to be willing to take some of your free time, and apply that to your own individual practice. So that's one big takeaway. I guess another big takeaway is that the reason, like, I'm so thankful for drum corps is it did teach me how to work with a group. I feel very comfortable coaching a chamber group. I feel comfortable with a tuba ensemble. I'd feel comfortable with a band. I finished teaching a band a couple weeks ago that was almost 450 people, and totally fine, totally at home, because you see the way that these teachers in drum corps do it year in and year out, and work with groups, and especially students they don't know very well. It just sets a really high bar for professionalism in front of students, in a way that doesn't get stuck. It transcends different mediums. So I'd say the biggest thing is, like, you can practice and you can get better. from an educational standpoint, that kind of group learning is really valuable. And I've noticed that the better groups, or the better teachers I've seen rather in these groups, um, they cater to the lowest common denominator. They find ways to challenge the most advanced members, but also make sure that other people don't get left behind. And it's never an attitude of like, come on, catch up, you can't do this. But if you're smart about it and your students are smart about it, it can all be done in a way where everybody improves.
And now it's time to save myself from getting beat up by Keith Packman. Ben, what advice would you give for musicians trying to start their professional careers while in school?
Good question, Keith. So I feel like I've been teetering a line between student and quote unquote professional for a while. If you define professional as getting paid to do the thing, then yeah, you play an Easter egg in high school, you're a professional musician. Um, but what really makes the difference early on, um, in Austin, we were very lucky in that when I was an undergrad, I could teach students. I taught my first private lessons when I was in 10th grade. I would teach middle schoolers because I was really, really hustle minded. They didn't like me. I was in a ska band. They didn't like me in the ska band because I was always worried about like what we were getting paid on the gigs, and ska bands don't get paid. Um, and I don't think any of them are watching this. I'm the only one that's still doing something musical. So, but I've had this hustle mindset for a while because I didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so I thought, what can I make 15 bucks an hour doing? I could teach middle schoolers. They're all region music. And so I started teaching in 10th grade. So I've been very comfortable with private lessons. And I moved to Austin, and that was simple there. And then it was playing professionally. So gigging, which was a lot easier to do thanks to my commercial background. My first like big boy professional sit down tuba gigs came far, far after my first professional stand-up tuba gigs. But it was those stand-up tuba gigs that really taught me how to think on my feet, how to interact with a whole mess of people and whole mess of audiences and situations. If you get comfortable playing a sousaphone in 100 degrees for drunk people, you can play any orchestra gig, hands down. So that's part of it. But for someone to start their career in school, I guess where Keith was going with this, I was really fortunate for the last year to be the a 1-year lecturer of tuba and euphonium at Valdosta State in Georgia, go Blazers. And that was all because of COVID. School went online, and I immediately thought like, okay, what am I going to do for a year? And so not hats off to my professor here, Mike Roylance, who's very into the idea of if you don't ask for something, you won't get it. So if you want to start a career, start meeting people, start asking for things, do favors for others, and hold on to them until you need them. And don't be afraid to say, this is the thing I want. Who can help me get there? Or this is what I want. Can we make this happen? You have to ask, or no one will know. Here's a good example that ties into that. So I had a pretty illustrious drum corps career. I won a couple championships. I won some solo contests. And I thought, like, after I aged out, after I was too old, I was certain that the phone was going to be ringing off the hook. Everyone was going to want me to work with their group. And I sat on my couch for the whole summer the next year, not a cricket, no one reached out. And I was just like, what's the deal? I thought I'd be, hot stuff right now. And that August after finals that year, I emailed as many people as I could reach out to for brass and marching to teach as many things as I could. And one person responded, and they said no. I got one response out of maybe 3 dozen emails, and it was a no. And then 3 weeks later, the person who taught tubas, it was at the Santa Clara Vanguard, the person who taught their tubas went to a different group, and I knocked on their door again and ended up working out. But if you don't ask for something or stick your neck out or anything, you will not get these opportunities. Like, I don't know how other people do it. Maybe other people get these things falling into their lap, but I always have to end up like eating my words and asking for help, eating my words, asking for a favor. You just have to. And if it says, for example, if you're not qualified for a job, apply for it anyway. You don't know what'll happen, like I wasn't totally sure that this Valdosta thing was going to happen, and then it ended up I was the guy there, and it was a great experience, and you know, and it's just it's amazing what'll happen if you just stick your neck out a little bit and let yourself have the possibility of either tremendous failure or embarrassment or both. And you don't have to graduate for that, Keith.
That's bad. Yeah. So I've been wondering a lot about, just this idea of like overlap and the different roles that you've been taking on lately. So I mean, I know you're clearly a very versatile musician. You said you've done drum corps and you've taught classical music and you've taught jazz and you play all these different styles. But I'm wondering like what overlap you see, whenever you find yourself in either a performance role of the different styles or in teaching the different styles themselves and how they sort of all inform one another, and inform you as a musician. So, like I'm thinking, for example, like I recently, again, was like totally unqualified for this position, but it was like a choir teaching gig, right? And I was like, sure, I've never done that before, but I'll go for it. Why not? And they're like, sure, you can do it. So, but what I find
That's
myself doing
awesome.
is like, yeah, thanks. And, I feel like it's informing my musical approach a lot just in, being able to vocalize it and then transfer that to the tuba. And, it's just like, uh, a circle, right? It just feeds off of one another. So I'm wondering if you notice this when you wear your different hats, whether it's in jazz or classical or, whatever the case may be, and just what you've seen for yourself.
Man, first of all, that's really cool. And like I can't wait to see what that does with your playing. I can't wait to hear it because I know you're going to be able to hear it. Like I'm convinced you're going to be able to hear that kind of activities showing up in your unconscious thought. But um you're exactly right. Like everything feeds everything. And it's the same way I think about like looking at the high ceiling instead of the floor is that, you know, doing more things can only make you better. Don't think of it as stuff that's going to take away from anything. It's not. It's only going to add. It's only good. Um, you know, we have some universal truths: time, intonation, and being nice. Right? Those are the big three in no particular order, and those matter in everything. I learned pretty quickly that sounding bad isn't an option ever, and that's kind of funny, but you think a lot about people when they, oh, I'm going to play a commercial style, I'm going to play jazz or whatever, and they totally drop the ball on their fundamentals. And it's like, dude, you, I think it's like the people that I went to jazz school, the people I went to jazz school with who are really killer are the ones who practice like crazy, are the ones who geeked out over professionals who, we had half the jazz trumpet studio at Miami was coming in to warm up with Sam in the tuba studio. Like the people who care the most, I think when I think of jazz musicians with strong fundamentals, I think of Matt's colleague at Mary Hardin Baylor, Alton, who I played with for years in Austin. Alton is a fundamental freak and he's killing it right now because of that. Like, and the kids who didn't sound as good, who were too cool for the gig, too cool for school, aren't doing anything. They're flipping burgers. And so it's like you have to ring true to those universal truths. Dave Zirkle, who Nick and I both studied with at the same time, had a really punctual saying, if it sounds good, it is good. Which is to say, if it sounds bad, it is bad. And so that has rung true for everything. I find things feeding over. My theory brain is fed by the jazz side of things, and my taste and interpretation when I play jazz are certainly influenced by the great violinists and singers of our time. But really, I think more than the differences are the commonalities of like you have to be in time, you have to play in tune, you have to be nice to people, you have to shower regularly and not say weird things to people, and you just have to be a normal person. And that I think is so much more important than any musical aspect of like just show up and be a good human being. But that's for every genre likes somebody who can play well.
I was so I have just two things and then a follow up question. What you were speaking about, losing the fundamentals when you go for different things. My favorite saying is that most classical people decide to play jazz by playing worse than they when they play classically. It drives me nuts. So anyone here listening, this is a to be funny thing. If you're playing like the improvisation sections in the John Stevens quartets or the Doug Bristol fantasy, or any improvisation thing, please just sound your best and it will sound cool. My other thing is I was on a small tangent at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor. They asked me to come in and give some words of advice during our performance lab, which is our convocation for students. And I told the students that a lot of people say music is the universal language, and I said that's wrong. Quality is the universal language. And they were just like, I don't know. Everyone was like, the teacher was like, "Can you expand on that?" And I was like, "Well, if you do things well, it will always translate to other people." And I think that goes for anything you do in life. But I wanted to just get one last kind of quick question out of you in terms of most of us who play a tuba or euphonium. They're probably watching or in America or started because we're in band and because we're playing bandy music, whether that's classical or pop. But we're kind of steered into a pretty similar place. If you were advising everyone on how to begin learning, let's just say commercial music, we won't say jazz specifically, what would be the first three things? I like things in threes. What would be the first three things you would tell them to start doing?
Pick up a really good jazz history book. My favorite is Ted Gioia's History of Jazz. And listen to every single song and artist that's mentioned in the book chronologically from beginning to end. Because jazz didn't make any sense to me until I put it in context. And from then, all the artists and their sidemen who became their own single acts and all this stuff, it all made sense, and all the talk made sense, and the tunes made sense. So learn the history, listen like crazy, incessantly to everything you can, and try and mimic everything you can. So like, it's not enough to just listen to all all the Bruckner symphonies. It's not enough to listen to Miles Davis's Columbia sessions in the late 50s. Like, you have to try and make it too. You have to try and play it. You can't you don't own it until you play it, until it's internalized. So you can listen to all the styles you want, but if you're not walking around like humming bass lines and like drumming on the table and singing in the shower, it's not really yours to keep, is it? It's something that's passing in one ear and out the other and not coming from you. But if you can take those styles and ingest them and then regurgitate them and then work with whatever you regurgitated, that's not only where you learn the style, but that's where you develop your own style. So it has to pass through, our chi, right? Like, it can't just go right through. It has to go, it's if you're an Avatar fan, it's like a lightning thing. It's got to go down and then it's got to go back out, right? Whoever had that on their bingo card, you just won. But also, in terms of quality, that's really fine that you mentioned that, Matt. I was on a Zoom call near the beginning of COVID with your dear old mentor, Mr. Rex Martin. And he summed up something about quality where the only sentence that stuck with me, he said, "If it's not something of quality, I'm not particularly interested." And that has hovered in the back of my mind for a while. Like, would this be cool? And it's like, oh, that's not going to be, is this a good gig? I'm playing a parade in small town New England, but it's with an awesome band. So yeah, I'll do a parade if it's with a great band, or like, do you have this great stage gig and it's with a band you don't really like playing with? Well, maybe I won't do that. It won't be very good,
I've been this year, in addition to doing my tuba euphonium thing at the university, I've been conducting the brass ensemble. They gave me that extra duty
Nice.
this year, and so I've been just recycling Rex Martin quotes, and most of them I have to preface by saying, I'm going to say this in a much nicer way than my teacher told me, and then they kind of just look at me when I say it.
Me and Nick, I think, just made eye contact. I say this with all the love in my heart.
Yeah.
That's one we got a lot.
Yeah, my favorite one is I change one word, but I say I say your autopilot is set to bad. And I think many of us can guess what word I changed. But Ben, this has been
You
unbelievably
probably say
fun.
automatic pilot, don't you?
I don't even know what those words mean. This has been delightful, but in any true evening hang, we certainly do not end with the thought-provoking and inspiring. We end with the text lightning round, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Yes, we finally got Jiffy Lube to sponsor the episode. Sorry for those who are looking for promo codes. We cannot get your oil changed. We can only make that one joke. So for those who aren't
Nick
familiar
has
on
them. You
Instagram,
got to DM him. DM Nick for the promo code.
DM Nick's imaginary social media profile.
I have his phone number. DM me.
Okay, we have to do this before this goes for 2 hours. So for those who don't know, the text lightning round is just short questions. Everyone asks a question. Everyone answers every question. And so, Juan, what is our first lightning round question?
Favorite album, right?
Juan, can you say that again? Your Juan sounded like aluminum foil.
Honor of Ben, favorite jazz album.
Favorite jazz album. I figured
Or
it
a
out.
jazz artist.
I figured out what the question was. Ben, you go first.
Okay, well, it's kind of a group of albums, but the ones that had the most influence on me coming up were Workin', Steamin', Relaxin', and Cookin', all from Miles Davis's first great quintet. They were recorded in the same sessions and then released as 4 different albums. But those were like the fertile ground that kind of sunk my teeth in beginning jazz. So those.
Nick.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this because this is the most recent one I've been listening to. I've been listening to a lot of Wes Montgomery, so Moving West. That's my choice.
Juan.
All right, so I'm going to go with a very stock answer, but kind of blue. Miles Davis, a solid one.
The Chris Potter Underground band. Those albums. When I was a wannabe jazz major at Alabama, those albums changed my life. In addition to the Wayne Shorter Angel Eyes disc.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That one was what that one. So Chris Potter made me figure out why I liked Wayne Shorter. It kind of was kind of backwards compatible, whereas a lot of people go the other direction. But that was great.
My twin sister and I were really lucky. We got to see Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter a couple of years ago in Austin, and it started with Herbie Hancock receiving a Lifetime Grammy Achievement Award live on Austin City Limits, and then he said, he said a couple of great quotes. One of them was, "In jazz, we don't hide, we uncover to discover." And then he talked about how they weren't going to play a single song we'd ever heard before. And it was 3 hours of whatever. It was awesome.
Nick, what is your lightning round question?
Sorry, froze for a second. I'm going to do least favorite Marvel superhero.
Ben.
Why do I have to go first? Okay.
You have to go first.
Least favorite?
I feel like we could also we all can say it in unison. I'm not afraid.
I'm trying to think of. There's so many now. I can't even think of all of them. God, I don't know, man. I Captain America's fine. He's stock. I'd put him near the bottom of the barrel. My favorite is Ant-Man. So
I mean, of
big
course,
Ant-Man energy.
Of course. I mean, we knew that. Then. Juan, what is your favorite?
No, least favorite.
What least favorite? Least favorite.
So I don't know his name, but he's the guy that shrinks super tiny. Is that Ant-Man?
Yo, catch these hands.
Oh man.
We're gonna be presenting the death match between Juan and Ben next week at 4 p.m. in the same hallway in Eastman that
by the flagpole.
Right
I'm hiding.
Nick, what's your least favorite?
I'm going to go with Captain America. To me, he embodies American exceptionalism. I can't get that thought out of my head.
And I would like to second that. I don't like Captain America very much either. So I guess we all were in agreement.
But we like Chris Evans.
Yeah, no hate towards.
He's all right. We don't like Captain America.
I've got a quirky one. What is your favorite YouTube video that is under 30 seconds?
Dang it. Okay.
Under 30 seconds. Feel free to
man.
go back to your YouTube favorites and search
Okay,
them.
let me. Oh, this has got to be good. Let me check my history real quick, because if it's my favorite, I watch it a lot. Somebody skip me, because let's see. Oh man, that's such a difficult question. How could you do this to me? Okay, it's probably not my favorite, but it's the best 30-second one I can think of. It's the clip from Dumb and Dumber where he asked, "Do you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?" And then it cuts off right after that. That's all I got.
Mine is Gus Johnson's Endangered Species video. I think it's very, very funny, and my fiance hates it, which makes it funnier to me than ever before. Nick.
Yeah, it's a old one. It's been around for a while. Sneezing Panda.
Juan, what is it?
Man, I don't think I have it, but maybe the accordion thing with like Trump or whatever. Maybe that was like the only thing that like I ever entertained.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Accordions make it funny all the time. Ben, please close us out for the evening. What is your text lightning round question presented by Jiffy Lube?
The question is, why the hell didn't you tell me I was gonna have to do this? No. Let's see. If you could be doing anything else right now, what would it be?
Sleeping. Juan.
Anything else? Let me reinstate that. Anything else? You know what? That's a really crappy question. What is the most recent food that you didn't like that you've decided you like now? All you
Nick, what's
picky
your
eaters
answer?
out there.
I missed the question. What was it?
Wow, Nick. Okay. What is the most recent food that you disliked and now like? That you've most recently come around to?
It's going to be mushrooms for me. It was always a texture issue. I didn't like them. They were gummy, and that was always really weird to me. Yeah.
Is there a way that you like them?
I actually, I had them with pasta carbonara, and they were in the sauce. I was like, that was good. Lots of carbs.
Juan.
So I think for me, it's going to have to be wasabi. First time I had it, I was like 10 years old. I thought it was guacamole put on a taco. It tasted terrible. Now I paired it with sushi. Now I know what life is all about. So there.
It's important.
I am gonna have to second Nick's thing. I used to really hate mushrooms. And,
Dude,
now,
y'all were missing out.
Well, I mean, we're on the train now, Ben. We're riding with you to Flavortown. Make no mistake.
I used to be a super picky eater until I discovered in drum corps that if I wasn't a picky eater, I got to eat more food. And that changed really fast. But I've had a couple things that have been like no-nos for me. I've never liked mustard and I've never liked pickles, but I love like pickled foods. I love kimchi and sauerkraut and all that stuff. And so I decided to just get over myself, and now I like it all. I had like a moment where I was like, Ben, you're 27 years old. Grow up, eat hot dog with the mustard on it, like you're gonna be fine, and it's fine.
You heard it here first, everyone. Ben likes it all. So we'll take that, and if you need the Jiffy Lube code, please DM Ben for Nick's phone number. We couldn't make it more straightforward than this. Sorry, our hands are tied. We don't really have very good agents. It's just us. So this is the best we can do. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you're on Instagram, thank you for tuning in live. If you're watching this after effect, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe, and we hope to see you again real soon. Bye-bye.